Welcome to today's episode of the Bryan G Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Gutierrez. If you're enjoying the show and receiving value from our content, please hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss out on the next episode. Now let's check out today's show. Today I'm going to go step by step through the process of a real estate transaction. By the end of this episode, you'll not only understand the process, but you know what to look for and what to generally anticipate as we move along. Now, for clarity, for today's discussion, this is a very high-level overview of the transaction, okay? We're not going to go into any great detail. This is just the order of things. Think of it as an outline of the transaction, okay? We're going to use future episodes to really deep dive into the major components of the transaction. For example, we're going to talk about, in a future episode, what pre-listing consultation is, what a listing appointment is. We're going to talk about title work. I'm going to interview home inspectors. We're going to talk about appraisals. We're going to do that deep dive stuff in other episodes. Today is just a general understanding, or an outline, if you will, of what is involved in a real estate transaction, just so that you know the order of things. Because there's a lot of things that I'm going to share with you today that you will never see, that you'll never have to think about, but are still going on behind the scenes that we're helping you out with. So let's begin. I'm going to start with the listing transaction. So someone calls me up, "Hey Brian, can you come talk to us? About possibly listing our home." Great. So before I come out, what I'm going to do is, and this is a pre-listing consultation, I'm going to ask you about the motivation and your timeline. Those are the two most important things to begin with, right? Are you in a hurry to sell? Do you have a lot of time to sell? A couple of examples. If you're an empty nester, your kids have grown, they're gone, right? They started their own lives. You have this big empty house, and now you want to downsize for your later years. You have some time there. That's not a really strict timeline. Conversely, if you're relocating for work, and let's say you tell me, "Hey, Brian, I have to move to the other side of the state, and I only have 6 weeks to do it." Okay, now we're under a tight timeline, right? Timeline and motivation. These are the two things that we're going to talk at the pre-listing consultation before I even meet you, so that I understand where you're coming from, what your situation is. Everybody's situation is unique. Every property is unique. And so I will qualify that from you so I have a really good idea of what you need from me, right? So the other thing I'm going to ask you about really quickly over the phone, and we're not going to get into too much detail with this, like I said, we'll do this later, is that I'm going to ask you about your home. Yes, I go through old listings. Yes, I go through public records to learn about your home. However, I find that those are generally very incomplete. If you've been in your home for any amount of time, it's very hard to have accurate information. If you've been in your home for 15 years, say you've added a bathroom, maybe you changed a half bath to a full bath, maybe you finished the basement, right? Maybe you put a bedroom in the basement. There's a lot of things that may not show up on our public records or on a previous listing that is relevant to your home. So we're going to talk about your motivation timeline. We're going to talk everything about your home, share everything with me. Again, we're going to go over that in more detail in a future episode. But anyway, I'm going to qualify your property and qualify you as a seller to find out exactly what you need from me. And then we're going to set our appointment to meet, for example, later on in the week. And so now I'm preparing for that. So I'm going to, in the meantime, prepare for that by preparing a CMA, comparative market analysis, or market analysis, or home valuation. There's a lot of different names for it. But basically what it comes down to is you want to know what your home is worth. So once I have the information about your home itself, that's when I'm going to run the comps or the comparable listings, okay? And that's where I'm going to prepare that valuation, and we're going to talk about that at the end of the week when we meet, okay? So that's what I'm doing, prepare for that. Now, for our discussion today, we meet, we have a great conversation, we agree on a great price, and hey, Brian, list our home. Excellent. What's the first thing I'm going to do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is, of course, we're going to sign paperwork, right? Which we can do that in person or e-signing, whatever works for you is fine. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to order the photographer, and I hire a professional photographer. Please, please, please use an agent that hires a professional photographer. It is a must. Nothing makes me more crazy than when I see the reflection of an agent in the bathroom mirror, holding up the cell phone, a blue jeans and a t-shirt, taking a picture of the bathroom. I can't even I can't even comment on that. That just drives me nuts. So we hire a professional photographer, okay? And any good agent will, because you want 3D tours, you want drone shots, you want still photographs that are great, you want floor plans, right? These are all the things that you want. We'll talk about preparing for the photo shoot in a future episode, but that's the first thing we're going to do after we get the paperwork signed. We're going to get the photographer going, and then what we're going to do is we go back to the office, and me and my staff, after that, we take all the information that we've gotten from you from that pre-listing appointment, also from our first appointment, and we're going to start creating the MLS draft. And so this is where we start creating your listing in the MLS. And so we start putting in the nuts and bolts about, room measurements and things like that. We start doing all that while while my administrative assistant is putting that information in. What I'm doing is I'm starting to compose the remarks. And there's two sets of remarks when it comes to a listing. There's the public remarks, which is what you see if you have a search link from your realtor or on Zillow, Trulia, realtor.com. Those are the general remarks, or the public remarks. And that describes the home. And we'll talk about more of this in the future, but I'm very intentional about writing those. I take a lot of great care in describing your property, but that's for the public. And then the second set of remarks are the realtor remarks. And that is exactly what it sounds like. It's agent to agent. These are things that are not published to the third-party sites, and that involves details that we agents discuss, such as a licensed real estate agent must be present at all times for showings, right? Please send your offers to this email. Here are some exclusions that we have, or here's a unique situation about the property, right? This is where the agent to agent stuff is communicating. So while the administrative assistant is entering your listing, I'm writing the remarks and getting that all set. And I'm very intentional about those because we really want to put our best foot forward. We'll talk more about that later. So now we need to decide whether we're going to um, put your listing as a coming soon, or if we're going to put your listing in immediately active as soon as we're done with this. It usually takes 48 hours for me to get all of the media back from the photographer, to, like I said, for those videos, drone shots, still shots, floor plans. It takes about 48 hours to get that. So we're putting in the listing while we're waiting for the photographs. Once I have the photographs and we can put all that in there, now we're pretty much ready to go. Now, just briefly, how we determine whether we're going to do a coming soon on Tuesday and list you on Friday, or whether we're just going to list you right away as soon as we have all the information, depends, again, on your motivation and timeline. If we're in a hurry, we have a short timeline, boom, we're just going to put it up. If we have some wiggle room here, then yeah, we're going to do a coming soon, build up some marketing hype, right? And then put your home active a few days later and build the hype and boom, hit it hard, right? So that's how we make that determination. So once your listing is up, then the showings begin. We're going to do another episode on everything that involves with showings, what to look for, right? Just briefly, I'm going to get with you to find out how much notice you need. Do you need 1 hour notice, 2 hours notice, right? I'll make sure that you get immediate direct feedback in real time as the feedback comes in from other agents from showing your home, right? We're going to set all that up for you. And whether you're texted or emailed, whatever works for you, we're going to make that happen for you. We're going to make those arrangements, okay? And then, again, this is a high-level discussion, okay? Very high level. So we have a bunch of showings. We communicate with you throughout that whole process, and then the offers start coming in. If we get multiple offers, not a problem. I am very good at breaking down multiple offers. I'll put it into a spreadsheet. We'll explain things very, very well. Again, we'll cover this later. And so you'll have a very good idea of which offer you would like to select. And so we will discuss that. And for the purposes of our discussion today, offer comes in, we accept the offer. Okay, so now what happens? So now after we've confirmed with the buyers and agents and everything, and we've summarized, we make sure that we get the bottom line signing back from from the buyer's agent. Okay. And I'm mentioning that because in most purchase agreements, the timelines for things don't begin until the offer is bottom line. For example, in a purchase agreement, if someone's having a home inspection, it'd be like, all right, home inspection to be performed within 7 days of acceptance. Acceptance is when the offer is bottom lined. Okay, that starts to clock on those 7 days. So if it takes 24 hours to get the bottom line, that's when it starts. Okay, it's not when we initially get the offer. Make sense? So I will go over that more in purchase agreements in a future episode. But once that begins, then all of the other work that you don't really see that much begins to happen on our end. So after we've confirmed with everybody, got the bottom line, we're ready to go. First thing we're going to do is send all the information over to the title company and start to pre-title. They start doing their homework and start doing all their research for our listing. Okay. And we have a wonderful episode where we interview Dawn Burdick from Titleosity, and she does a great job explaining what the title process is. So definitely look for that podcast. It's excellent. But they begin doing their thing. And what title companies do, basically, they dot the I's, cross the T's to make sure that everything is ordered. So they're off and running. Okay. All right. So when we're under contract, first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the status from active to pending. And what that's going to do is that's going to cancel any future showings that may be on the books, so we don't have to worry about that. And everybody knows in the MLS and everywhere else that we are under contract. And then we're also going to, cancel any open houses that we may have scheduled, right? Because now we're under contract. We don't need those anymore. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get the EMD check from the buyer's agent. And what that is, that's the earnest money deposit that comes from the buyer with the purchase agreement. We're going to talk more about what the earnest money deposit is and what those functions are in a future episode. But we make sure that we get that because that's part of the transaction. That's important for us to have. And then we get that off to the title company because all funding is held by the title company in escrow. All funding, just in general, is never held by brokers. It's never held by agents. It's held by title companies in escrow. Just a fun fact there. You're listening to the Bryan G Real Estate Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about me, check out my YouTube channel, Bryan Gutierrez Keller Williams Real Estate, or go to my Facebook page, Bryan Gutierrez Keller Williams. And if you want to hear more of this podcast, please subscribe. Now back to the show. Now we confirm with the buyer's agent what the marital status is of the buyers. Are the U.S. citizens, formal legal names, current address, their title company, right? And we compile all this information. We send it into our office, to our front desk, okay? And then we go into our calendar and we enter all the relevant dates and timelines. So what is the projected closing date? On or before? Boom. What is the inspection time? Boom, right? All these things. Not only do we put it on our calendar, but we also send this to you to make sure that it's on your calendar as well and make sure that you know everything is going on too. Communication is very key throughout this process. So next major step is the home inspection, and the buyer's agent will schedule the home inspection through the Showing Time app. They'll schedule it like a showing, but it'll be shown up as an appraisal, and then they're going to schedule the home inspection, and we'll go more into this later. But then, that'll be performed generally within the first 7 days of acceptance, depending on the purchase agreement, of course. Every offer is different. So we will have a discussion on how to prepare for the home inspection. Okay. If there is a major item that comes up on a home inspection that the buyer's not happy with, then we'll need to negotiate that. Okay. Or if the home inspection is very clean, everything is fine, then the buyer can simply state that they are, quote, satisfied with home inspection, unquote, and then we just move right along. After the home inspection, the next major step is the appraisal. And so most lenders will wait to order the appraisal until after the home inspection. Why? That's because, like I just mentioned before, if there's a major problem with the home inspection, the price of the home might change, right? If there's something really major wrong with the house, we on the listing side might say, okay, we'll knock, $2,000 off the sale price or $5,000 off the sale price, to compensate the buyer to get past the home inspection, right? So that's why lenders like to wait till after the home inspection just to make sure that the price of the home doesn't change. Okay. So then they order the appraisal. And when the appraisal is ordered, it usually takes the appraiser, I don't know, 2 to 4 business days to come out to perform the appraisal. Um, and we'll talk more about this in the future. So the appraiser will come out. Now, what I do is I like to meet the appraiser. Okay. And just as a side note, a lot of agents don't do this. This is something I like to do. I like to meet the appraiser. So if they're coming at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday, I get there at 9:30. I have the home open, the front door open, waiting for them. And I put together a great information kit, right? It has the public record. It has the listing. It has any comps that I feel would help support value, and also has a feature sheet that that talks about the great things about your home. You have a new furnace, you have a new roof, you put in new windows, you upgraded the kitchen, right? I'm going to make a punch list there and a real attractive flyer of everything great about your home. And of course my business card, and that'll all be in there. And so I'm going to wait for the appraiser. When the appraiser comes up, just so you know, we agents, we're not allowed to overly or unduly influence an appraiser, right? There's limits here. But what we can do is give them useful information about your home to help make their job easier. And it's a sign of respect and a sign of courtesy, right? That I've gone out of my way to meet them, to present them with some help and useful information about your home. In other words, putting our best foot forward. Okay. And generally appraisers are very appreciative of this, and we're like, hey, Mr. or Miss Appraiser, here's the folder, here's some great information for you. Do you have any questions about the property before you begin? And generally they're like, nope, I'm good. And I'm like, okay, great. Well, I hope this is helpful. Here you go. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call. Now I leave you to it. Right. And generally appraisers really appreciate that show of respect. And so now with the appraisal, if we come in at value, everything is fine. Everything is good. We move right along. If the appraisal comes in low, then that's another thing that we need to negotiate. Again, we'll talk about this later. After we have the appraisal, things start to get pretty quiet for us, okay? Because all these major things have done. And it's really kind of a weird spot when you're a seller, because at first we're like, pre-listing appointment, then we have the listing appointment, then we have the photographer, then we have the home inspection, then we have the appraisal, right? We're like boom, boom, boom. And then when we're past home inspection and we're past the appraisal, for us on the listing side, things get really quiet now, because there's really not a lot of major activity for you, the seller. Okay. Now this is everything behind the scenes. So now those appraisal results go back to the lender. The lender is wrapping up the underwriting. Underwriting is also getting with the buyer, getting the rest of the information that they need to complete the underwriting so the loan officer is working hard on that end. And the title company is now continuing on their end to clear the title, get everything done. So this is the time, like I said, where we get a couple of weeks where it just gets really quiet. Now, just as a general fact, I like to update everybody on Mondays. And so I'll still send you a Monday update and just say, hey, it's great. We're past inspection. We're past appraisal. Everything's going well. What I'll do is I'll call the lender. Hey, Mr. Miss Lender, how's it going? Is everything good with your buyer? Great. Is there anything you need from me? Nope. Excellent. Boom. So then I send you that update. I spoke to the lender. Everything's fine. I spoke to the title company. There doesn't appear to be any clouds on title. Everything's moving just fine. I will let you know that. We'll communicate that to you. Now, at this point, we're waiting for 3 lovely words, the favorite words we want to hear: clear to close. And that comes from the lender. So we're anxiously anticipating the clear to close from the lender. That means that the financing is all set. They're all ready to go. Underwriting's great. Everything's done. Everything's verified. And they are now ready to purchase the home. As soon as we get the clear to close, we can now schedule the closing. We cannot schedule the closing until we get the clear to close. Okay. I have people all the time be like, hey, it's been 10 days. Hey, it's been whatever. How come we're not scheduling the closing, or can we schedule it now? And it's like, hold on. There's some things we can control, some things we can't. On the listing side, we do have to wait for the buying side, for the lender to give us the clear to close. Okay. Just so you know, I have no influence over that. That is all financing from the lender on the other side of the transaction when we're on the list side. Okay. So when we do get to clear to close, the first thing we do is we contact everybody and say, yay, we got clear to close. Awesome. Let's schedule a closing. Now, if the on or before date is still, 10 days away, we can close earlier than our purchase agreement said, because every purchase agreement says close on or before this date. Now, if we want to stay to the original closing date, that's fine, because that's in our purchase agreement. Or if everyone's ready to go, we can close sooner once we have the clear to close. Okay, so we'll work that out. Of course, I'll call you. We'll have a conversation. We'll talk about what's best for you, and again, the order of things, right, and what works out for us. And so, yeah, we can make that arrangement either way. So now that we got that, now we're going to confirm the closing details with you. We're going to contact the buyer's agent with the date and time. We're going to confirm those details with the buyer's agent. We're going to contact the title company, confirm those dates and times. We're going to ask the title company to then confirm with everyone in a group email so that we're all on the same page after we verified individually. And then for us, we're going to schedule a conference room at our office, right? For us to have a place to close. Fun fact, just a general tradition, not a hard rule, but general tradition is we generally close in the office of the listing agent. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's just kind of tradition, right? So if work schedules are crazy and we need to close separately, not a problem. We can close in two different locations. I can close people out of state. We're here in Michigan. We can close someone in Michigan, close someone in Texas. I've done it before. Not a problem. We can make those arrangements. Again, depending on our situation, what our circumstances, we'll make those arrangements and make that happen for us. And then we're going to get that closing date and everything onto the calendar. We're going to make sure that you guys have it, right? Make sure that everybody is on board. And then we're going to talk with you also. Again, this is the listing side on how you want to receive the proceeds from the sale. Do you want a check? Do you want the money wired? If you're selling and making a purchase and we're close to closing the purchase after this sale, then the title company can hold the proceeds in escrow until we have your buying transaction, say a day or two later, right? So there's a lot of options there. Again, whatever works for you guys, we'll make that happen for you. And then those instructions will also be on the closing packet and on the closing documents. And this is where we get the ALTA statement, okay, from the title company. And we'll get this 24 to 48 hours before the closing. And this is all the numbers. And this is all the numbers to the penny. Okay, so you have a debit and a credit column for you, the seller. Credit, debit, and this will have everything from the sale price to the prorations on taxes to the transfer taxes to any kinds of fees, anything like that. Everything's going to be on the ALTA statement. We'll get that 24 to 48 hours before the closing for us to review. It comes to me first. I look through it. I make sure all the details are correct, and then I send it to you, and I say, please, Mr. Mrs. Seller, please look this over. Two brains are better than one. Make sure this looks okay to you. And then we both review the numbers. And then, when we both agree that everything is fine, which 99% of the time it is, then we move forward. Now, if there is a discrepancy on there, that's not a problem. We have 48, 24 hours to correct anything before closing. That is perfectly fine. If there's a fee on there that shouldn't have been, or something was put in a credit instead of a debit column, whatever that is, we can definitely make those corrections. That's not a problem. This is why I like both of us to review it, just to make sure that everything is okay. Not a problem if we need to make the adjustment. That's a nice thing about getting the numbers before the closing table and not getting the numbers at the closing table. Now, one quick thing as we're getting closer to closing, okay, are the utilities. And I do want to mention this real quick. Sellers, do not cancel any utilities. Please, I'm going to say it again. Do not cancel any utilities. It is the buyer's responsibility to change the utilities into their name, okay? The buyer's responsibility to change those over. The only utility that the seller is concerned about is the water bill, okay? And that is where one of two things happen. We either call the township and say, hey, we need to find a water reading, right? and then they can either come by and scan it, or they can just do it at the township office and send us an email with an invoice, okay, for the date of closing. That's one thing that the seller, you do need to arrange. Um, or some townships don't do a final water reading. What we do is after the home is or actually at the closing, the title company will hold usually about $300 in escrow uh, for the water bill. Okay. And then when the quarterly water bill comes after the closing, the buyer will send that to us. We'll send it to the title company. They'll prorate what your share of that is and then refund you money in a check out of that $300. So one of those two things will happen: either final water reading, or you'll get reimbursed after the quarterly water bill. Every township is different. Every municipality is different. So whatever applies is what we'll do, but we'll take care of that for you. Okay, so that's what you're doing. But once again, I'm going to say one more time: sellers, do not cancel utilities. Okay, if it's the winter, you cancel the utilities, the home goes below freezing, you got busted pipes, now we got a big problem. See what I mean? Never ever cancel utilities. The buyer's responsible for putting that into their name. Okay, so now we have the closing, and this is where we like to have everyone together if we can. But once again, if if work schedules conflict or something, and we need to close in two different places, that's not a problem. Now at the closing, if you're getting possession at closing, okay, then you'll also get the keys at closing. Okay, if you, the seller, needed to stay into the house after closing for time to move, which is what we call occupancy. So if you needed occupancy 2 weeks after closing so that you could finish moving, that's perfectly fine. You all know that we can do that, right? At the end of that occupancy, when you're ready to move out, you, the buyer, and I like to go, and I will meet at the house for the key exchange. So it's 2 weeks later after the closing, going to have the key exchange, and it's exactly what it sounds like. We're going to exchange the keys. You're going to give the keys to the buyer. The buyer at that point will have possession of the home. I'll have a form with me, slap it on the hood of the car. Everybody signs it. Everything's great. We've exchanged the keys. I send that off to the title company, and then the buyer has possession of the home, and we are done. We all move on. So there's a lot of other things that go on in a transaction I really didn't have time to go into today. Once again, this was a very high level overview, just the process of a real estate transaction. I promise you in future episodes, we're going to go into more detail about all these major components, from the listing appointment to home inspections to appraisals to title work, right? I mean, all these things, we will have future episodes where we will deep dive and you can really learn more. But I really hope this is helpful. And this being one of my first episodes, I think this is a really good place to start. So now you have the structure, you have the bones of the transaction. And yeah, it's a really interesting process. And we're here throughout the whole time communicating with you and just trying to make this as easy as possible. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much.